You know that feeling, right? Where you're excited about something, maybe you're even good at it, but uh, the thought of actually doing it in front of other people, it just sends shivers down your spine.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're going to unpack today, and we're going to do it with magic.
Oh.
You've provided us with a transcript of a real conversational hypnosis session, and it features a magician named Georges, who is grappling with, well, exactly that fear.
Yeah, and what I think is so fascinating about George's case is that this isn't about like disappearing acts or pulling rabbits out of hats.
Right.
This is about these kind of invisible walls that we build in our own minds that hold us back even from the things that we love.
So set the stage for us. Who is Georges, and what's his deal?
So Georges is a magician, and he's been honing his craft for years, right? He's passionate about magic, attends conferences, learns new tricks, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
But then when it comes to actually performing, even casually for friends, he just hits a wall.
And he claims it's because he's too old.
Right. And he even points to some older magicians at his club, describing them as blasé or tired. And you can almost hear that kind of self-doubt creeping in as he's making these comparisons.
Yeah, but we all know age is just a number. I mean, hasn't he ever seen Penn and Teller? They're practically ancient, and they're still blowing minds.
Exactly. And he even admits that. Like, there are other older magicians who are still at the top of their game.
Right.
So clearly there's something much deeper going on beneath the surface. This too old excuse is just that it's an excuse. It's masking a much more, I think, complex fear.
So if it's not really about age, what's the real magic trick we need to decode here?
I think it's the fear of not living up to expectations,
Okay.
both his own and those he perceives others have of him. You know, he's been doing magic for 30 years, so naturally he's put a lot of pressure on himself to be exceptional.
It's like the more expertise you accumulate, the higher the stakes become.
Yeah.
You're not just a hobbyist anymore. You're like supposed to be a master magician.
Precisely, yeah. And he talks about this fascinating concept that he calls the plus factor.
Okay.
And so imagine those moments in a magic show where you're just completely captivated, where the impossible seems to unfold right before your eyes. That's the plus factor, these transcendent moments that elevate a trick from impressive to like truly unforgettable.
And Georges wants to conjure those moments for his audience, but he's terrified of not measuring up.
Exactly. He's so fixated on achieving that plus factor, on creating those mind-blowing moments, that the fear of disappointment, I think, paralyzes him.
Wow.
He's so afraid of not reaching that level of brilliance that he avoids performing altogether, which robs him of the chance to even try.
It's a real catch-22. He loves magic, he wants to share it with other people, but he's paralyzed by this fear of not being good enough. It's almost as if he's trapped in a disappearing cabinet of his own making.
You're spot on. It's a classic example of how our own internal narratives can really sabotage our potential. And this is where conversational hypnosis enters the picture. Think of it as a way to kind of gently untangle those mental knots.
Okay.
To help Georges see his own thought patterns more clearly.
So instead of waving a magic wand to make the fear disappear, this type of hypnosis is more about guiding Georges to find his own way out of that self-imposed cage.
Exactly. And that's precisely what makes this transcript, I think, so fascinating. It's like watching a master locksmith carefully pick a lock.
Okay.
Through carefully chosen words and questions, the expert guides Georges to explore his own subconscious thoughts and beliefs, ultimately leading him to a place of empowerment and self-discovery.
Okay.
And remember, conversational hypnosis isn't some kind of mysterious force.
Right.
It's simply a way of using language to help someone access their own inner wisdom.
So instead of telling Georges what to think or feel, this expert is more like a mental Sherpa, guiding him on a journey to uncover his own answers.
A perfect analogy. And that journey is what we're going to kind of unpack in more detail.
Okay.
What specific techniques does the expert use? What are the turning points in George's self-discovery?
Right.
And most importantly, what can we learn from his experience that might help us unlock our own hidden potential?
So how does this mental Sherpa actually guide Georges toward a breakthrough? Is there like some sort of magic phrase, a secret handshake?
It's much more subtle and I would say elegant than that.
Okay.
One of the first things that the expert does is highlight the inconsistencies in George's thinking.
Okay.
Remember how Georges is fixated on achieving that plus factor, those
Yeah.
awe-inspiring moments in magic?
Right? Like he's chasing some kind of elusive magic formula.
And yet, the expert points out that Georges only seems to experience the plus factor as an audience member, not when he's like dissecting and analyzing his own performances.
Because when you're too busy scrutinizing every move,
Yeah.
you can't really get lost in the wonder of it all. right?
Precisely.
Kind of takes the magic out of magic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this realization is a real turning point for Georges.
Right.
The expert isn't like offering solutions,
Right.
but rather guiding him to uncover the answers that are already within him.
So by helping Georges see his own blind spots, the expert is kind of enabling him to shift his perspective,
Yeah.
which then unlocks the possibility for change.
Yes, and you can practically hear the gears turning in George's mind as he starts to understand that by fixating on a specific outcome, on manufacturing those plus factor moments, he's actually blocking himself from experiencing the joy and spontaneity that drew him to magic in the first place.
It's like he's so busy trying to orchestrate the perfect illusion that he's forgotten to enjoy the art of magic itself.
And that's the trap of perfectionism, isn't it?
Right.
It can suffocate the very passion it seeks to elevate.
This is where I think that trust element you mentioned earlier comes into play.
Yeah.
Georges has to feel safe enough with the expert to confront these uncomfortable truths about himself.
Absolutely. The transcript really highlights this aspect of conversational hypnosis. It's not about the expert wielding power. It's about creating a safe and supportive space for self-discovery.
And that safe space allows Georges to move from a place of fear and uncertainty to a place of, possibility. In fact, by the end of the session, he almost seems, eager to perform.
It's a remarkable transformation, isn't it?
Yeah.
The anxiety hasn't magically vanished,
Right.
but he's no longer held captive by it.
Right.
He even reframes his anxiety as simply wanting to do well.
Okay.
The difference is he's no longer defining success solely by achieving that elusive plus factor.
So instead of being consumed by the fear of not being good enough, he's shifting his focus to the act of creation itself,
Yeah.
to simply embracing the opportunity to share his passion.
And that shift, my friend, is where the real magic happens.
Yeah, it's like he's finally letting go of the need to control the outcome and embracing the beauty of the unknown. It's like kind of like jazz, wouldn't you say, where there's like structure and skill, but the magic really happens in those moments of improvisation, those unexpected riffs that make each performance unique.
What a wonderful analogy.
Yeah.
And that shift in mindset is really a key principle of conversational hypnosis.
Okay.
It's about empowering individuals to tap into their own innate wisdom and creativity, to move beyond those limiting beliefs and embrace new possibility.
It's like that moment when a magician reveals how a trick is done.
Yeah.
It's not about stripping away the magic. It's about showing that even the impossible is often achieved through, ingenuity, practice, and a willingness to kind of defy expectations.
And remember, this isn't just about, magic shows or performance anxiety. This idea of reframing our relationship with success.
Yeah.
With letting go of the need for, absolute control. It's relevant to all aspects of life, really.
Totally. Whether we're, stepping onto a stage or starting a new project or just even trying to navigate the uncertainties of everyday life. That ability to embrace the unknown, to find joy in the process, rather than fixating on some, predetermined outcome. I think that's where true freedom lies.
Yeah, and what's truly remarkable is that Georges, he arrives at this realization himself.
Okay.
Remember how he initially felt, stuck?
Right, like he was convinced that he couldn't perform anymore.
Perhaps by this fear.
Yeah.
And yet, by the end of the session, he says, and I'm paraphrasing here a bit, but he basically says, the problem isn't my fear, it's that nobody's asked me to perform.
Wow.
He's like chomping at the bit to get back out there and share his love of magic with the world. He's no longer viewing performance as this test that he has to ace,
Right.
but as an opportunity to connect, to create, to experience the joy of magic alongside his audience.
That's such a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest obstacles we face are the ones that we construct in our own minds.
Yeah. And conversely, the solutions often lie dormant within us, just waiting to be unlocked. And conversational hypnosis, in this case, acted as the key.
Okay.
Helping Georges dismantle those self-imposed barriers and rediscover the joy that drew him to magic in the first place.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the question for all of us listening is, what seemingly impossible feat might we be capable of if we simply dare to try? What hidden talents or passions are we holding back from exploring because of, fear or self-doubt?
Right.
Maybe it's time to embrace a little bit of that George's spirit.
Yeah.
To silence those inner critics and step into the unknown with a sense of wonder and possibility.
Beautifully said.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, thanks.
And until next time, keep those minds curious. And remember, the most impressive magic tricks are often the ones we create for ourselves.